Thanks for joining us again. We've decided to finally cover off on the second part of the It miniseries. Jared, Matty, how are we this evening?
Good, mate. How about
Excited.
you?
You're excited, Matty? I'm not going to say excitement was the word I would use. But we do need to cover off on this. We have covered up on Chapter 2, so we're just cleaning up a few things, and we're actually going to compare the two.
It's an essential either way.
Yeah. All right, before we get to that, just some quick around the grounds. What have we been watching in the last week? Jared?
Yeah, not a hell of a lot. I continued on with What We Do in the Shadows. Loving it, of course. I watched The Old Guard on Netflix.
Yeah.
Which I found to be quite good. I quite enjoyed it. And a lot of sort of impressive action scenes. Decent little concept for a movie. And yeah, I thought they did a pretty good job with that. I finally watched Gemini Man.
Ooh.
Again, thanks to Amazon, picking up the real big ticket items there.
And how did it go down?
Look, it's just pretty dull. I think the idea is sound, not necessarily something we haven't seen before in other sort of iterations like Looper, but I liked the idea enough that it could have sustained a decent little action flick, but it just wasn't quite there. I mean, the cast was solid, but yeah, it was just very dull. And I think the effects stood up. The effects of like the de-aging and whatnot, they stood up pretty well. But yeah, just not super exciting.
Let me ask you this, Jared. Just as having seen now both Looper and Gemini Man and saying they're obviously similar in concept, that obviously Gemini Man used the de-aging stuff.
Yep.
And Looper went in a different direction. Which one works better for you?
Oh, I think Looper's the easy answer because it's a better movie, but it's hard to kind of separate that from how it looked. I felt like the young Will Smith stuff worked really well in certain sequences. I mean, there was a couple of points where it showed up and it was seamless. Other times you could see it and it stood out a little bit. But I think, obviously, Looper turned out the better of the two, and so it's kind of hard to separate that from which worked better in the aspect of the young and the old.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, the thing's been kicking around since the 90s, right? The script, the Gemini Man one. Is that right? It was about the 90s, wasn't it? I mean, if it hadn't come out there, you and I would have thought it was the greatest fucking movie we'd ever seen in our lives. Yeah, obviously the effects weren't there at that particular time.
Do we think the script hadn't been polished since the 90s as well?
I don't know what was happening there. I can't really say, to be honest. But it seemed like it had sat in somebody's drawer and they just tacked on a couple of bits and pieces here and there.
Mm.
So yeah, not fantastic. What else? I checked out Don't Let Go.
Oh yeah, another time travel style film, right?
Yeah, hints of frequency. It didn't quite do the job. It was entertaining enough. I had some fun with it, but it just doesn't end anywhere other than, you know, solid idea, kind of middling use of that idea, and then you finish up and you think, yeah, I probably won't go back to that in future. So a little bit of a shame, but you know, I was okay with it.
I think it's fair to say we're sort of finding the lower tier of Blumhouse.
Yeah, and I mean it fits right into Blumhouse. They're not making a movie that doesn't have an idea that doesn't interest me. They're making a movie where I looked at it and I said immediately, oh yeah, I want to check it out. But they don't always hit the mark, which is, you know, understandable. There's a lot of movies being made that don't hit the mark,
mm-hmm.
And I'm happy for them to continue running with that model, and I'll continue to support them. So,
sure.
Yeah. Other than that, I've been watching a lot of The Wire. Just about, I'm end of season 2, so I'm smashing through that. Absolutely loving it again.
4 hours worth the other night?
Yeah, 4 hours.
Yep. 4 hours worth?
4 hours in one sitting. I chucked it on and thought, oh yeah, I'll fall asleep to this, and I sat there for 4 hours. Yeah.
Late night.
Yep.
Okay, Matty, what do you have on?
I've got a little bit. I saw that doco on the triplets on Netflix.
The ones the guys were separated.
Yeah, they're separated, and then it just turns into a big conspiracy. That was sizzling in words of Jared. Really great watch. So being a twin as well, I was watching it. I was just like, man, this is insane. What happened and what some people thought was all right to do in the name of science. It's like some real Nazi Germany stuff. Like it's really interesting to watch. Yeah. And I hadn't read anything about them or knew anything about them, so I went in cold. My wife knew sort of had read bits and pieces and sort of knew what was coming up next. And I got some shocks about that story, but really, really good, really entertaining. I watched Constantine. Get a bit of Keanu in. And then
I didn't mind that.
Yeah, I didn't mind it either. Like, it's got some good action in it. I don't mind anything that's got a little bit of that religious connotation in it to give you've got an instant backdrop of context there. So I like that. And Keanu's definitely playing the down on his luck guy. Like he's good fun to watch. I'm halfway through Knock Knock as well. I did a Keanu double. Which is it's a bit pitiful.
It's not top shelf stuff.
Yeah. I've got through the porn movie section of the movie, and the action's ramping up. It's going to turn into Wolf Creek in a minute. So
no, it doesn't.
Does it? No. I watched an episode of South Park, which I hadn't done in probably 15, 20 years or something.
Yeah, I'm about that, I think.
They did a 15-minute bit on leaving the toilet seat up. I was impressed with their commitment to that. But I've definitely, I think, moved past a bit of that humour that they're pushing now. A lot of that parody stuff. But it was a bit nostalgic. I saw Old Guard as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't mind it. I was like, if I was an immortal and I'd been around for that long, I'd probably be sitting on a couch somewhere. I don't know if I'd be in a militia, but I don't know, I'd probably be more like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day, trying to perfect some skills and rather than anyway. But it was good watch. Yeah, it wasn't bad at all. It was nice to see people making independent decisions and in the good fight scenes in that one.
You were impressed with Charlize's axe work too, weren't you?
Yeah, loved it. I love it. When she picks up the fire axe, you're just like, oh, something's going to happen here.
Yeah.
That was good. She got mad. I watched Roddy Cheng and Joe Rogan stand up. Very different styles, but
I watched the Ronnie Cheng one on Netflix.
He is polished.
Yeah.
He is great. He's a really, really funny guy. Yeah, I'd recommend that for anyone. I watched Colossal as well, which is
the one with Anne Hathaway?
Anne Hathaway and Jason Sudeikis.
Oh, yeah?
That was really good. It was very different. Like, it's sort of, they're controlling a Godzilla-like character, and it's a whole allegory for domestic violence in a relationship. So it's a good watch. I didn't know anything about it when I stepped into it, and actually really enjoyed it. So that was pretty good. And I've been watching Keeping Up to Date with Bachelorette as well.
Good.
Well,
You would have loved it. You would have loved it. They did a date.
I can guarantee you.
Wait up. They did a date. They did a date where Jalen, what's his face from Boston was there. He was asking the girl about her relationship with the dude.
Oh my gosh.
And then giving her advice on love and and what it is to be a man. I thought it was pretty funny. But that is the same old trash. But
was it at the American Bachelor?
Yeah, the Bachelorette. Yeah, it's the...
Oh, okay.
Which is, less entertaining when it's the dudes fighting each other. They're morons, a lot of them. It's pretty funny. I still don't... I don't quite get how you could have 15 blokes all trying to date the same girl and everyone's generally pretty cool with it. It's she's like straddling one dude and they're like, respect her, give her a space. It's just like... It's not a normal way to go about these things, but maybe it is in America. I don't know.
Yeah,
Tinder on ice.
Not sure.
That's me. That wraps me up.
That's everything.
I had one more too, Adam, that I forgot that I'm sure you'll be interested in. I finally saw
What
The
was it?
Hunt.
Oh, The Hunt.
Yes. So Blumhouse
How
again.
did that go?
I actually liked it. I quite liked it. It was interesting enough, and the parodies are pretty obvious, but I quite liked it.
Oh, that's good. That's good to hear.
Yeah. I don't think it's not a sort of 5 out of 5 effort, but it's definitely worth a watch.
All right, I'll definitely have to check that one out because I've seen seen that one had come out on PSN and I was sort of hovering around it. So I'll probably give that a go.
Yeah, do it.
My stuff was pretty low key.
Let me guess, some horrific documentary.
No documentaries this time around.
Shit.
Due to with our news coming up in the next section, I dusted off the Halloween box set of Blu-rays.
Yep.
Watched Halloween, the original, from 78, Halloween 2 from 81, and then watched all the extras, deleted scenes and, things of that nature, including the documentary about Jamie Lee Curtis and when she goes to the convention for the first time.
Yep.
Which was really interesting. I also watched Halloween 2018. So I basically did Halloween 1 and then 2018 to sort of
the
get
new
that timeline
timeline.
Yeah. Basically to get that out of the way. You know what? A lot of people hanging shit on 2018's Halloween. I've just got no idea what the problem is.
Well, I know, especially where we've come from. Like, fuck, what do you want?
Yeah. To me, yes, it was a bit of a sort of a grab bag of the favourites, but it was done well. It had the little thing of reuniting Michael and Laurie, and really, to me, it's kind of like a gateway to a set of sequels. My hope is that Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends go in other directions, and take it, become more standalone, or on their own, and I think that's what they probably always envisioned, and I think they did it real well.
Yeah,
maybe I'm fucking too easily impressed with a Halloween film that makes sense. It doesn't involve fucking druids or something.
That's right, or a copious amount of fog and.
Maybe I'm just happy with that shit.
Comedic policemen and things like that. Like, if you can't be happy with what we got in 2018, then I don't know what you want really.
Yeah, I don't think you'll ever be happy.
Yeah,
I think that there's a feeling from some corners that they still love that older period of Halloween when the 80s Halloweens, and I can understand that.
Yeah,
I love some of that shit.
But it was certainly paying enough respects to it that you can still enjoy it and still love those 80s ones, right? Without having to sort of...
Agreed. I mean, nothing that says
we need a lower budget.
Yeah, we need a lower budget, worse actors.
We need a $2 million budget. Nothing says to me...
A shoddy script.
Yeah. I thought 2018 was good, but it doesn't mean I don't still like Halloween 4.
Yeah, exactly.
Which a lot of people think sucks.
Yeah.
So
to which I say, fuck off, Wade.
Exactly. So I guess I sort of don't quite understand the hatred from some corners. But, each to their own, and I still slap my forehead when I see the Dr. Sartain stuff. I just think, what the fuck were we doing here?
Yeah. But
really?
But then you think to yourself, I'll cop that in favour of as opposed to doing something like handing it back to Rob Zombie or something like that.
Exactly.
So you gotta have some perspective on this stuff, I think.
Exactly. Now, Jared, I got back onto Scrubs.
Good.
Now, I really like this show. I really like this show a lot.
Yep.
But watching it a second time, you really notice what a prick JD is.
Yeah.
He's a real prick. Like the way he treats Elliot is fucking horrible.
Yeah.
Like, as you watch the show go on, he's a fucking asshole. But the show is kind of picked up by its other characters. I think that's what the great thing about it is, that it's not really like he's not the main source of amusement.
Yeah, it's
You
pretty
get a
well
lot of
rounded.
amusement out of Dr. Cox. You get heaps
Yeah.
out of Turk. You know,
Plenty out of
those
Kelso.
side characters. Dr. Kelso, Todd. The Todd gets me laughing all the time.
And not only that, but it runs deep. I mean, you got the likes of Hooch and Teddy Buckland and guys like that just pop up for, a couple of seconds and get you cracking up.
Exactly.
And then you get cameos from Colin Hay.
Oh, yeah. Of
Yes.
course.
My favourite episode.
I mean,
That is
I
a
think
good
that's
episode.
why the show still resonates for me. Is those secondary characters and some of the frontliners like Dr. Cox and all that. But those secondary characters are just, they keep me coming back to it. And I always get laughs. But yeah, JD just doesn't come off as well on second viewing.
Interesting.
And the last thing for me was actually a book, Jared. I picked up, I went looking for a bit of slasher sort of literature.
Can you call it that?
I picked up, if you can call it that, yeah, if you can call it that. I picked up one
Bit of
called
slash
There's
lit,
Someone
eh?
in Your House.
Sorry. Continue.
Sorry?
I was just I said a little bit of slash lit for you, but
slash lit.
Just continue on.
It wasn't too bad. It was pretty well written, and it had some really creepy moments, and a couple of cool things that I really liked about whenever there was a murder. The killer would do sort of like toy with the person by opening like cupboards and shit. So the person would walk out and then come back in, and the cupboard would be open, and they'd be like, did I leave that open? Did I, like there'd be a bit of that, which I thought was kind of creepy. But I think at the heart of it, right at the, getting down to it, it was difficult to like the characters because they were very thin, which is slasher movie 101, But overall, it was a decentish read.
Yep.
I'm not going to jump out of my skin about it.
Okay. Interesting.
But that was me. Very short. Now, just a quick bit of news before we get into it. Scream Factory have released a 16-disc Friday the 13th box set. All over it, like a rash, on this podcast.
Yes.
Matty, you haven't seen all the films, but you may as well spend like big money to watch them all. 16 discs, mate.
Sweet Maria.
Yep.
You could not get any deeper than this.
I mean, it's got everything.
Unless you listen to the Damn Enchiladas series on this podcast. Other than that, I mean, if you want to know bits and pieces about Harold taking a shit,
Yeah, I mean, if they don't have a
We go
doco,
deep.
if they don't have a doco on who doesn't wipe their ass in this series, then it's not it's not as deep as Damn Enchiladas. But they do what they can,
yeah, they're not as fucking full on to the cause if they're not talking about someone's bowel movements in the series.
But it also, I didn't pick this up first when I first looked at it. I immediately dropped my cash, and then I looked what was featured on it.
You immediately dropped $150.
It includes
Without even looking at it.
it includes Freddy vs Jason as well.
Yes, yes, I did notice that.
So yeah, it really does have everything covered.
Look, Matty, your wife's not even going to ask, what the fuck is $150? What's this $150 to spend?
150. You got to bump it up a little
not
bit.
even
There,
gonna-
Adam.
Double it. Double it with the US exchange rate.
Yeah,
We just dropped 25 grand on plumbing. I can slip that into the bill.
Yeah, well, it'd fit.
Look on the end of that.
Yeah, you bought some plumbing and then you bought the turds to go along with it. No,
What's
it's,
the Scream Factory? Where'd you get this from?
yeah,
That's the
Scream
plumbers.
Factory, yeah.
That's the name of the plumber.
It's from the Grunt brothers. Yeah.
Yeah, the Scream Factory. That's what I'd call my plumbing.
All right. Did you have any other news? Weren't you clowns talking about a Highlander remake?
Yeah, Matty's keen on that. We just had a look to see if there was any updates. Seems to be still chugging along.
I don't know. I'm just waiting to hear if they're going to reuse all the Queen songs.
Yeah,
You know,
they have to, surely.
I don't know how you can. I won't be satisfied. There's
Yeah.
no way I'll be satisfied
If I don't hear It's a Kind of Magic, I'm out.
I need so unless they get Stan Bush to do the soundtrack, I won't be happy.
Yeah.
Well, so the Highlander remake has been talked about for a number of years, though, I believe.
Yeah, it has been, but it was only towards the end of the last year that they attached Chad Stahelski, whichever one it is. Both of them, I believe.
I believe they attached Chad.
I used to drink those in year 12.
to the film. Let's leave it at that.
But yeah, they. I think he had some words a month ago to the effect that it's still there, it's still going.
He's he'll knock off John Wick 4 and then he's coming back for this.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that they'll.
Yes.
Maybe we'll find maybe John Wick 4 is the Highlander remake, and we find out that he's immortal.
That would be great. It'd be hard
that would make sense.
Did he knock off Boban's head? That could be the first scene.
Yeah, that was when, that was his first kill in Pursuit of the Quickening, I think.
Do you think they'll iron out the plot holes?
No, fuck, we don't have time for that. What plot holes?
Yeah, that's right. That's amazing.
What plot holes? Fuck. I think the whole script was a plot hole.
I'm going back to review my score. It's a 4.5.
Well, you gave it 3.5. I can tell you. When in doubt, 3.5.
Yeah.
So I gave it 3.75. I'm rounding up.
Fair call.
All right. Well, look, let's take a quick break, and here's the trailer for It Part 2. It Part 2 from 1990. It's directed by Tommy Lee Wallace, who I believe, Matty, directed one of your favourite shit sandwiches, Halloween 3.
Oh, there you go.
It's produced by Mark Bassino, who produced Hip Hop Kids. It's a beautiful thing. Alan S. Epstein, producer of Future Cop. And Jim Green, who produced Growing Pains, Return of the Seavers, and Matthew O'Connor, who produced Snowpiercer. Now, it's written by Tommy Lee Wallace and Lawrence D. Cohen. Now, Lawrence D. Cohen wrote the Tommyknockers miniseries, and it's, of course, based on the novel by Stephen King. It stars Harry Anderson as Richie Tozer, Dennis Christopher as Eddie Kasprak, Richard Mazar as Stanley Uris, Annette O'Toole as Beverly Marsh, Tim Reed as Mike Hanlon, John Ritter as Ben Hanscom, Richard Thomas as Bill Densborough, and Tim Curry as Pennywise. I believe the budget for the entire miniseries was $15 million. And the viewing figures, I think, was somewhere in the 20 to 25 million people watched the miniseries, so it did real well. Put it that way.
DVD rewatches.
A little bit of trivia. Tim Curry was
endless.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tim Curry was reluctant to take the role of Pennywise because he didn't want to be buried under all the makeup. He'd just done Legend, where he sort of played a character who was also heavily made up. So basically, Tommy Lee Wallace minimised the amount of makeup on Curry, and so it didn't sort of get in the way of his performance. And I think he was also on set less. Like, they didn't have to have him for so many days.
I'd imagine it was pretty difficult to get focused with Ridley too under all that makeup.
Yeah, true.
It sounds like he was a bit of a jerk on the set, because apparently when he was in the teeth, he'd just be like standing around having a smoke, and then he'd just flash the teeth at the kids to scare them off, because he didn't want them to get close to him.
Yeah, well, he was taking the method acting route.
AKA,
don't talk to me.
Just an excuse to carry on like an asshole and not be called out on it.
Yeah. Look, he hadn't cobbled any shoes or anything like that. He hadn't sewed his own costumes.
He hadn't stopped any houses lately.
Mate, Daniel Day would have actually become a fucking mythical creature.
Yeah, he would have somehow developed his own fucking set of deadlights and started haunting.
Found the Hellraiser
drains.
All right, let's dive into part 2 of the miniseries now. Matty, give us your thoughts on this. Now, you weren't. I don't believe you're involved in our previous episodes on part 1. Is that not correct?
No, I was there for part 1. I haven't.
Okay, you were there for part 1, so we know your thoughts on part 1.
Part 1 I loved.
So
part 2 is a massive drop off. So I think it's. I don't know if it's the adults or what it is, but it drags a fair bit. I think Tim Curry's interaction with the adult actors is a little less genuine. I don't know, maybe it's I don't know what it is, but I didn't enjoy it as much as the first half of the mini-series or of part 2 of the actual movie. Yeah, I don't know. Well, wasn't anywhere near as scary as probably I remembered it, and the plot dragged a bit. So probably a 2 for the second half.
Okay, Jared, your thoughts, mate?
Yeah, I give it a 2.5. Yeah, Matty's right. I think it just starts to drag. I found a couple of the performances of the adults not so great either. It's just much harder to connect with him. And I mentioned this about part 1 as well. We have this connection to it because we were watching it in the 90s, but then the new movies actually, take the setting to the 90s. So I find more common ground. Obviously, there's common things that you find and connect with all of the characters throughout. But seeing it in a time period that you actually experienced is a little bit easier and makes it sort of hit home a little bit more. So, with a few years in between, that's something that's hasn't aged well for me about the 1990 set. But yeah, it just doesn't quite stand up in a couple of aspects. I think the effects to really kill any chance of a good ending. It's just really hard to take anything out of that ending when it just looks so bad. Yeah, really. So yeah, 2.5 was where I finished up.
Fair enough. Now, look, friend of the show, Luke, gave us his thoughts. I threw it out to him to give us his thoughts on both this part and the chapter 2 film. He gave it 2 out of 5. He says it has some great moments and it scared him as a kid, but it's pretty dated. The fact that it's a TV movie and the censorship around that probably creates some problems. And the effects have aged pretty badly. He does say, look, there's a bit of nostalgia for it for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Big fan of Tim Curry.
Yep.
And look, I'm kind of in the same realm. I went 2.5. I kind of split the difference because for me, I actually think it opens reasonably well. Some of the early scenes between where they're coming back into town and Pennywise is kind of they're seeing Pennywise for the first time since they were kids. There's a little bit of subtlety to it and a little bit of low-key sort of creepiness and menace to it.
Yeah.
But it just, the longer it goes on, the more the problems and the warts start to come to the fore. I think for the most part the actors are okay, but there's a cheapness to it.
Yeah. Which
I hate to say because it's a TV. It was a mini-series on television, so you weren't working with $100 million, were you?
Yeah.
So, but I just felt that things drag through that mid portion, and then the ending, the finale. I mean,
they spend a long time establishing that they've got the bond and they all need to be part of this bond and they're stronger together, and it just takes forever in the middle section there to figure that bit out.
And I think that hurts this part overall. And the scope of the book is too big for what they had. And they're trying, they're reaching to get there, but they're just not able to because they're limited by what they can do. And overall, it kind of ends up hurting that the way it ends, especially. You know, it's really, really hurt by that. Tim Curry, I'm still a fan of Tim Curry's performance. Only slightly over Skarsgård, but I just prefer Curry. There's something about him that I really, really like. But
it'll be good to get a chance to talk about that later on.
Yeah, it's a decent TV film, but it's kind of that's not much more than that.
I think in general, and I haven't read the book. I've read a lot about the book, but I haven't read the book. So I just feel like, from the sense that I get and the sort of consensus that I've seen from some other places as well, is that even the book drops off from the start to the back end. So it
does,
and I think that's just common throughout each iteration of it. So it's sort of, I don't know. No one's really nailed that yet.
Yeah. He was doing a lot of cocaine around the end of this book, right?
Yeah, I think he was doing plenty of rituals of Jude on his own time.
Mate, he was chipping away, Jared. Chipping away.
I would have loved if they'd changed that whole ending. They could have done something much better at the end there.
Yeah. I mean, that's the freedom you get. We look at something like The Mist and the ending that they put together for the movie version of The Mist essentially just finished that off to exactly what we couldn't really hope for better. Even Stephen King said that. Stephen King described that as the ending he wished he would have wrote. And
it took the premise and the stuff that King had done and took it somewhere else, but it was in a good place.
Yeah.
A little bit like, I'll throw another one at you for King because we're slightly off tangent here, but Misery.
Yep.
I think the Misery movie did that story better than what King had done it. In a sense of the book is good, and there are obviously the movie takes a lot of the book's narrative and everything, but just some of the things in the movie I think work better.
Yeah.
Let's jump into the likes here. Look, we're all pretty standard that Tim Curry is excellent.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's a given.
And is the most memorable part of this miniseries.
Absolutely.
I think we can agree on all that.
Yep. For sure.
I thought the rest of the cast was okay.
Yeah, for the most part.
They were sort of.
I thought so. Yeah. Like I like John Ritter.
I personally would have liked to see John Ritter as Bill Densborough.
Well, yeah, I think looking at it, I think he was probably one of the stronger performers in there, and Bill really isn't. So.
I think Luke's on your page on that one. He's not a fan.
Luke's a smart man. Let me tell you that much. Sticking to the good performances in there. I really liked John Ritter. I liked Tim Reid. I thought his portrayal of Mike was pretty solid.
He was gentle. He did the whole.
Yeah,
it was good to get everyone back into it.
I didn't mind Eddie so much. Yeah. It's a very different portrayal than we got later on, but I didn't mind Eddie so much either. So yeah, I felt for the most part it was pretty solid there.
What about Richie?
I've got a couple of things to say about Richie.
Richie was okay.
Yeah.
But okay, I wouldn't. He didn't exactly stand out.
I got some carryover from my feelings from part 1 on Richie there too.
Yeah. I think there are a number of really good sequences to start with to open the film. the one where they see Pennywise digging the graves.
Yeah.
At the graveyard, and he just pops up out of the last grave, and he said, doesn't he point something? One of them's already filled.
Yeah, they can't have that one. It's already filled or something like that.
It's already filled, and that was all about Stan and that sort of stuff. I really liked that.
I think that sort
Luke
of
points
continues.
Out.
Sorry, I was just going to say quickly. I think that sort of continues. In part one, I felt that some of the strongest Pennywise stuff was when they kind of just lingered on Tim Curry, and that was another one of those where they just show a shot of him sort of popping up, and then they show that one that's kind of from a distance away, and there's something unnerving about that, like it puts you at the distance that someone might be actually standing away from them when they're observing it, and just seeing Tim Curry kind of doing his thing from that perspective is really kind of creepy.
Yeah.
And they do the same thing when Ben drives past in the taxi, and it's just him by the side of the road, and they just kind of they just let Curry do his thing.
I think that's a big difference between the two hits as well, is that Curry, even though I guess he has no teeth because he's not really allowed to do anything because it's the nature of it being a miniseries.
Yeah.
But he's also got a constant threat of turning into the angry clown that's going to rip your arm off. So I feel like the more current one is more of a he's sort of dialed up the notches a lot louder a lot of the time, and it takes away I guess some of the uneasiness of him being there, but being able to turn at any moment and turn your fears into your nightmares.
Yeah, I mean we'll get to that when we talk about them as in comparison.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would agree.
But that's what I liked about Tim Curry, though. I like that he's that smiley clown. I'm going to get to you later. Just wait for it. And I think that also buys into he can't get them just yet. Like he's not able to get them just yet. He hasn't broken them down yet. I've still got to break him down a little bit more before I can sink my teeth in. So I like that aspect of it.
Yeah. Luke pointed out a specific scene that I actually really loved, which was when Richie goes into the library.
Yep.
And
all the balloons.
Pennywise, and this is kind of why I like Tim Curry's version, is that he's telling jokes like a normal clown would, but then interspersed with him looking at him and going, leave now, and, threatening him and all that type of stuff. And then the balloons start falling from the roof and popping in people's faces.
Yeah.
And, everybody else is just kind of sitting there and copping it in the face, doesn't even know, it's happened. Whereas Richie can see the blood all over them.
Yeah.
I actually, I noted that one down as I didn't love it, mainly because I think it was actually I really enjoyed the scene, but I looked at it and I thought I wish they had done that in the new one as well.
Yeah.
Because the thing that killed it was the effects of the blood and the actors that were flinching when the balloons were popping and they were supposed to.
As you would.
Yeah, and that, with modern technology, they probably could have done that without any flinching and some the blood dripping down people's faces without them noticing easily with CGI and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Luke's spot on there. Like that definitely stood out to me because of Pennywise.
And then he kind of finishes up with those jokes.
Yeah.
Like the Prince Albert in a can and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And I finished that
really
scene
nice
and I was like, I just sat there and I thought, fuck, I wish they had redone that one because that would have been killer.
That was so good to get Richie in the mood for, like, he's still in a bit of disbelief. He's forgotten everything and he's still in a bit of disbelief at that point. It just shocks him into the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really solid scene. I like that. I actually think this is one of the stronger scenes from any of them, and it's because I think it's kind of really low-key creepy, is when Bev goes back to her old place and meets up with that lady, Mrs. Kirsch. And for about a minute, it's kind of like the way they do it in the new movie, but they dial it up
they dial it up big time in the new one.
They dial it up for the next part of it, but the way she sort of she slurps her tea and then she smiles with this mouthful of rotten teeth. And,
Fuck. Trust me, mate, there would not have to be a clown in my history to be scared of those fucking teeth.
Yeah. I'd be like, oh, fuck, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And then there's the blood in the teacup.
Yeah.
And then she knocks it over, and that's where Mrs. Kirsch is down on the ground and she starts quietly telling her to leave town.
Yeah.
And it's a really solid set piece. It really it's low key, but it's menacing enough. It doesn't actually have Pennywise in it, which is surprising. I think he comes out
the door at the end
once she runs out of the house.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a really nice touch, and I think they did a really good job with those type of sequences early on.
That sort of covers one of the strengths that I did find this time around that I hadn't really seen on it. I think occasionally the streamlining does work, trying to pare it down to that 90 minutes. Essentially, it's split in two 90-minute sections, or close enough to. And I think some of the streamlining does work, and that's probably an example of it.
Yeah. And there's another sequence, again, it's Pennywise toying with each individual person, but the whole one where Ben starts sort of making out with Beverly and then looks up in the mirror and sees
Best line of the movie.
Clothes.
Yeah.
Best line of the whole thing.
And then he just looks at him and goes, "Kiss me, fat boy."
Yeah.
I burst out laughing when I saw that. That's memorable, right?
And it's just a nice,
definitely.
once again.
And they bring it back later and he's like, "You're real, you're real."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean,
I like that. I thought it was a really good touch.
That's an example of where, the second one doesn't, it uses the line and it just pales in comparison where it tries to put it in.
Yeah, surprisingly.
The homage gets lost,
a little bit. I didn't have a lot else because things start to deteriorate after that for me. And a lot of the second half of the movie is in the dislikes.
Yep.
I feel a little bit sad saying that because it's kind of like shitting on my childhood because this was something that we'd grown up with and it was really important to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it feels a bit
still
like that.
there.
But,
I think it's still there, but you can see what doesn't work about it. But I don't think it. Seeing all the things that you think don't work about it as a movie and as a story, I still get some of those same feelings when you watch through it. You still get some of those same feelings and that those memories when you watch parts of it. So it doesn't. It's one of those ones where I can watch it and it doesn't take away from that experience. It'll always be what it was in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I do like Eddie's speech where he's talking about how you guys are the only people I ever loved. Like, it's a bit sad, but that's probably where you feel like the group's the most bonded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a real positive part in the movie and enjoyed that.
I did like that too. I actually had a couple more.
Well, I'll just throw one in here from Luke. The
restaurant.
He was actually more of a fan of the restaurant sequence in this one.
Ooh, good on you, Luke.
It was a little bit more subtle for him, which
I
can probably agree with.
I was more a fan of the build up, the way that it took its time, getting them all sort of back together and whatnot.
And then he snaps out of it. They snap out of it. Again, Richie snaps out of it and he's like, "What are we doing here, guys?"
Yeah.
But I like that a little.
Luke
the fortune cookies is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's one of my favourite.
He was more of a fan of that, I think, in comparison to chapter 2, which again we'll get to.
I thought, to me, not to play my hand too early, but I thought once it got to the fortune cookies, both of them fucked it up. But prior to that,
I was a bit the same.
I think I did side with the original on that. Where I felt like when they got to the restaurant, sort of meeting each other again and catching up, I just felt it a little bit more on the original.
Yeah. Like that bond.
Yeah, they took more time.
They're real friends because they can meet up after that many years and it's like old times.
Yeah.
It took more time. That's one thing I'll say about chapter 2 is that particular sequence just rushes through.
Yeah, it does speed.
Which I'm not really sure why, considering the movie's almost 3 hours fucking long.
Oh, I know.
You know?
Yeah, what?
Like, why would you rush that?
Yeah,
That's key.
it is.
You know, it seems a bit weird. And look, just sort of to cover off on Luke's thoughts on the restaurant fortune cookie, I would agree with you, Jared. I think this is probably the better version, but neither of them work
Yeah.
for me.
Once it hits that
This
part,
one's got bigger problems because of its budget. Like, some of the effects look real cheesy.
Oh, some of them. I mean, there was one that the thing with kind of the nippers was a wind-up toy, basically.
That was fucking... Oh, well, you would have won that at the Canberra show.
Would have broken a
That was
week later.
fucking terrible.
I like the eyeball.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrible.
Yeah, a couple of days in, the nipper's fallen off, the fucking thing doesn't roll anymore.
You wind it up and then just breaks.
Yeah.
So,
I
what
wonder
else
if they'd
did
put
you
it
have,
in
Jared?
it show bag. I want to know.
That would have been good. I'd still buy an id show bag, I think. I really dug the scene of Mike and Bill and the bike.
With the cards.
Yeah, sort of just riding and then
Yeah.
cutting back with a similar shot of them when they were kids doing the same thing. And I felt that was a nice little bit of streamlining too. Just a little bit of a montage cutting back and forth between modern day and the old times. And again, it's something that's common to people. Like, I've had that experience where you go to your parents' house or something and you stumble across an old toy you used to have or something.
old
You're
Transformers.
Like, yeah, you're like, oh, fuck, I remember this thing. And you kind of, it felt a bit like that. And again, Adam, as we sort of mentioned with the streamlining, it's a quick little way to get that sort of Bill's remembering things and to start forming that bond again. So I was actually a big fan of that one.
Yeah.
They do a good job of changing the mood at the end there when they see Pennywise on the cards and then it's like snap back to reality.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty strong too.
I thought that was a nifty little way to sort of do that. The Henry Bowers stuff, I'm not gonna say it's a like, but I felt like the way they used it and just going straight to Mike being the one to get stabbed, far more impactful because he was way more important. So when he got stabbed, there was actually a threat that this whole thing was going to be tumbled down, come tumbling down because he was the one that had held the burden and held them up for so long and was willing everyone to go on. So him getting stabbed felt like a representation of this shit's falling apart, So I felt that worked better. And
I've got a real bone to pick the way they did it in Chapter 2.
Yeah.
I think they fucked it up in Chapter 2.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll pick that to pieces shortly.
Yeah. Which was weird because watching Part 2 and seeing how they did it, I was like, so why did you change this?
Yeah.
Why'd you go away from this? Why didn't you sort of pick from this for Chapter 2,
Yeah, and again, it was something something they spent that extra time on. And it just didn't feel like it should have been spent there. I also didn't... I liked a couple of little pieces, just a couple of small touches at the end before they go back into the sewers, where they have that little part where they're sort of hugging it out, and Bill's saying, I'm not going. I'm going to finish this. And they have that little part where they're hugging it out, but they use a couple of flashbacks, which I think Chapter 2 kind of picked up on and probably did a little better, but, they have a couple of flashbacks to their young selves and sort of having similar moments. And the last one was the paper boat coming out and sort of instigating the ending. I dug that,
yes.
sort of bringing it all back around to where it all started. Yeah, and then setting the boat off again to go where they needed to go. I kind of like that.
I like Stan's head in the fridge.
Yeah. I'd actually...
That was kind of cool.
I'd sort of forgotten that part. Obviously, with it happening in Chapter 2 as well, I was sort of... Again, I was aware of it, but I've forgotten what it was like in this one.
Yeah.
And I think it was pretty cool too, how they just sort of... He gives everyone a bit of a serve.
Yeah.
And does what Pennywise does.
Yeah, that's right. He's really effective. He looks at everybody and he has a neck, but he's turning.
And the big eyes, he's kind of glaring at everyone. Yeah, that was cool.
I enjoyed that.
So that sort of rounded off my likes list.
All right, well, let's delve into the dislikes. Once again, I've got kind of overall problems.
Yep.
For the early going. Look, it just feels cheap. and I don't want to. It's unfair to compare it in a way because you're talking about apples and oranges.
Yeah.
You know, you're talking about $100 million on one hand and 15 for a total 3-hour film on the other.
Yeah.
On television. So you're being muted by the fact that...
It was Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 was total like 170 all up, wasn't it? The first one, was it 70?
So you're talking about totally different dollars.
And 30 years in between for inflation.
Yeah.
Let's adjust the economics.
And I just feel that that's unfair to do. But if we're being honest, it does look cheap. It does have a TV movie feel. And TV movies back then had that cheaper look to them.
Yeah, I mean...
in comparison to now.
You're spot on. It's hard to hold it against it.
Yeah.
But when you watch the two side by side, you can't not see the money.
I heard a story about the spider. The director had the plan for it to be like a muscular reptilian looking thing. But when they reconstructed it, he hadn't seen it. He saw it a few hours before they were going to do the shoot, and it ended up being what it was. And he was livid. But they didn't have any money and they didn't have any time, so it was just like that.
Tommy, you need to know weeks in advance that thing looks like a piece of shit. You don't wait till a couple of hours out.
That's right.
To know it sucks.
Yeah.
I also heard something. They said John Ritter had sort of, when they told him that it was going to be a spider that they were going to be facing off against, he was kind of surprised. He was kind of like, why wouldn't we deal with Tim Curry?
Yeah.
Like, why
Which is fair enough.
That performance.
Get rid of the spider, rewrite the script. And you've...
Work with what you have. What are your strengths?
Yeah. Why can't his head turn into the deadlights or something like that? And then they've got to deal with that.
Yeah.
The bottom line is, he's one of your strengths. So why do you not use him in the finale?
He was done after his 2 weeks. Maybe out of there.
That's right. Not only
I had enough of this shit.
To add to the effects and the look of it, there's a diabolical effort with a matte painting in there too that sticks out like dog's balls. It's an absolute shocker when they look up at all the people in the webs. And there's like one or two of them that appear to be like effects, and then there's a matte painting behind it. It's just shocking. Like it stands out. It all just kind of takes away the effect of it. So
Luke is not a big fan of Richard Thomas.
No.
He sort of Luke was kind of saying, look, he's not really 100% sure what it is. He's just
ponytail. We all know it's the ponytail, Luke.
Well, I'm going. Yeah, Luke, I think you missed it. It's right on top of his fucking head. He looked like a bloody idiot. I mean, seriously, he looked like he scraped that thing up off the road.
It's a shock.
It was really bad, and maybe, I mean, I didn't really warm to him either. That's why I was saying I reckon it would have been better to have John Ritter as Bill.
It's not like the looks were all that matched up anyway.
Yeah.
It's only sort of a passing resemblance there. Like, I was completely out on his performance. I just couldn't cop it at all. I don't know what it was either. So there was a couple of instances where there was a little bit of kind of overacting, and a couple of where it was just like, I just can't.
I can't get that where they have that look of him. He's holding his face and he's having the flashback. I'm not sure if it's in the first part or the second part, but it's very overacted. And
yes. There's a couple of moments where he's kind of he gets a bit of a scare. And he looks at the camera and it's just, I mean, shit. The director would have been happier with the performance of someone like you or I. I think he would have just had to go with it. We're fucked. We've only got $15 million here. We've got to speed through this. Like, it's just really bad. I don't know. I couldn't exactly pinpoint what it was about it either. But I'm in agreement. So I just didn't. And given that he's the biggest role of that group, really, because it's sort of, it all instigated by his brother, and then it kind of finishes with him kind of forgiving himself, sort of.
He's meant to be the leader of the group as well.
And I was completely out on that too.
Yeah, agreed. We talked about this before, so I'm not going to go into it deeply, but the pace the pace of things once the Losers Club have reassembled. And we've had those moments, a couple of moments. And interestingly enough, they go with those couple of moments of seeing Pennywise before they get to the restaurant. Is that not correct? Like, you know, Bev has hers with Mrs. Kirsch. That's before the restaurant?
Yeah.
Is that not right?
Yeah. Yeah, and then...
So there's a couple of moments there. They sort of get to that good stuff
John Ritter's
there.
had that moment in the forest where he's seen his young self getting caught. Doesn't do anything
Stan's
about it.
been in the... Richie's been in the library.
Yeah.
You know, those moments are all up front. And so once the restaurant sequence is over, there's some real pacing issues. It's a bit of a slog. She's pretty boring through some of that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not very well paced, unfortunately.
Yeah. Can I just, going back to actors, can I just bring up Richie now? Because
here we go. Yeah.
I was not pleased with him either.
You hate him.
Oh, it's just
I didn't mind him.
It's just the performance, not so much, but this is one of the things that dates it really badly for me is the brand of humour that Richie is pulling out is fucking atrocious. I mean,
he's writing Pennywise jokes.
Well, he's a fucking waka waka off being Fozzie Bear. Like the gags are terrible. They're so bad, and it continues. It's like it's pretty constant. Every time he says something, it's trying to be funny. And there's that one where they're
Groucho Marx.
Yeah, there's that one where they're in the library and they're all slapping knees at his gags, and they're shocking. He becomes so grating. I can't really give the actor a kicking for it. I just felt like it was I felt the same thing about Seth Green in part one. Is that it wasn't so much that he was bad. It's just that the age of that being funny, was it ever funny? I mean, shit. Could we have survived the 60s and the 80s if that's what was being pulled out?
I'll tell you what my favourite part of that is. He's been trotting out these shit-house jokes for 90 minutes, and then right at the end we get this thing about how he got a movie deal with the bloke, and it shows the sequence, and they're fucking hitting each other over the head with tennis rackets or something. I'm like, what?
Isn't he wearing like this? He's wearing like an Indiana Jones hat, and there's fucking feathers flying around.
That wouldn't even get a run in the bloody police squad episode.
Police Academy 87.
It was laughable.
Yeah. I thought exactly the same thing. I was watching that thinking, no one's looking at that movie. That movie's not going to be a hit.
That's not the happy ending that anybody wants, is it?
No, absolutely not. It's not exactly. It doesn't look like he's producing Blazing Saddles there. So I don't know. It's just
no. Look, Luke brought up something interesting that I wanted to sort of get to as well. It was another sequence that I really didn't like. Not because of the idea wasn't okay. And, this is what Luke was saying. He was kind of saying that there's some really good ideas there, but they just don't. They're not delivered very well on screen. So they then we point at them and go, what the fuck was that? And the one he's talking about is the bloody fucking dog. Pennywise was a dog.
The Doberman. Yeah. The pom-poms.
Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah.
It looks terrible.
I must point out that, the dog looks terrible, but the shot at Dean Koontz in that scene is pretty good.
Yeah. Because that guy's name is Koontz.
Yeah, the security guard is called Koontz, and they say, I think Bowers says, Koontz is on the nice. Oh, he's the worst. Poor old Dean Koontz.
Apparently that's in the book too.
Yeah, I think it is.
The moon is my least favourite. There's nothing more to take me out of the mood of being scared than Pennywise's The Moon.
Yeah.
It's the worst. It was so ridiculous. I just pictured Gibbo rolling his eyes and going, what are we watching this shit for?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mate, let me tell you something. Gibbo is still burning about the fact that he watched the entire thing the last time to watch it.
Yeah. No,
it's I believe he watched both parts.
Yeah.
He did.
He was pretty dirty on that, I think.
I think so. Speaking about things that took you out of the movie, the little piece with, is it the producer? His name's Greco, with Bill's wife.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about a hefty helping of ham, Adam. Christ.
Yeah, he was bloody atrocious.
It was absolutely shocking. And the scene went for what? It must have been about a minute and a half or 2 minutes or something. The whole time I was like, bloody hell, did we need this?
Audra's a waste of time, full stop.
Yeah.
Well, funnily enough, that's one of my dislikes too, is even though she doesn't have a lot of involvement, it just seemed like 5 to 10 minutes of stuff that we didn't need.
Mm.
And it all coincides with the ending, with the final bit with her and him on the bike.
Mm.
Which, as Luke was saying, so you've seen the deadlights, you're now catatonic. So what, you just get on the bike and ride down the hill, and she'll be good.
Yeah.
Is that how it works?
Yeah, that's all it
It
needed.
just really comes across really poorly.
Yeah.
And her character in general is just it's a non-event.
Then we get a quick look at the classic sort of stuntman, a couple of seconds of a stuntman that doesn't look like Bill, namely because he's got a decent haircut. I think, but it's sort of I wasn't a huge fan of that one. I kind of got what they were going for, but I was just and I actually kind of love another one. They finish off and you see Bill and her hugging. And everyone surrounding them's giving them the angry fist in the air.
Yeah, booping horns and stuff. Get off the road, you wakers.
Yeah, and cut your ponytail off while you're at it. Yeah, I think it's
Look,
it was probably slightly misguided, that one.
For me, we really need to get to the elephant in the room, and this film's its finale is very, very weak.
Yeah.
Like, very weak.
I
It
think
seems to be over within, what, a minute or two?
Yeah,
There seems to be not much that they do.
I think they speed through it because they know, as Matty sort of said before, I think people knew that it wasn't up to scratch.
There's not enough there to keep you interested. They needed to rewrite it and do something completely different.
You know what I'm doing? If I walk onto set 3 hours before I'm about to shoot, I see that model of the bloody spider, which is shithouse. I'm going, listen, get on the phone to Tim Curry and get him back down here.
Mm.
Get that shit out of my face.
Yeah. Just go with
and start
something
working
like that.
on using Pennywise.
Yeah.
I'm having Pennywise pop up on Richie's movie set and then fucking keeling over at the side of how unfunny the movie is.
Yeah. It's just the least.
You know what it looked like, Jared?
manifestation
A
that they
Terence
could have
Hill and
came
Bud
up-
Spencer picture.
It's the least scary, manifestation of they've got this plodding spider when, like, a spider's not scary because it's 20 feet tall. It's scary because it's poisonous and moves fast and you don't know where it is, and then they've got this Goliath of a thing that they just, like, rip its heart out. Like, I didn't like it.
Mm.
They could have come up with something much better.
And it didn't.
It was
Didn't
really,
add anything.
really poor.
Doesn't add anything to the metaphor of what's going on in the story.
No, that's what I
It
felt
just
like.
kills everything.
They kind of let that go a little bit.
They're like, spiders are scary. Let's put a spider in there.
Mm.
I don't know. Not to rip on Stephen King, who's obviously written better things Sleep than I ever will.
He's done a little bit of good work in his time.
Yeah.
We'll give him a
He's
pass.
done some good work in his time, both high and sober.
Yeah.
But
Struggling to get by, Adam. He probably could do with a couple of dollars off his work.
Taking acting.
I'm glad that I checked his IMDb page and noticed he had 15 fucking projects in current
God.
development.
15,
so he'll
mate,
be
it's-
fine for money
Last time I checked,
while
it was 20,
COVID's going on.
Last time I checked, it was 27, and that was before. That was before 2 to 3 separate projects out of If It Bleeds were optioned.
Yeah, well, I noticed If It Bleeds, that's his latest group of books.
Yeah, the short story.
3 of the 4 have already been optioned. It's only just been released, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, exactly.
Well done.
So, look, there's no denying that the book has problems in its finale. There's no denying that. But the TV movie takes all the worst parts of that, condenses it into like a 3-minute sequence.
Not
where
enough
we
cosmic
shoot
turtle
some-
for my liking.
Yeah, like we needed some cosmic turtle. Like,
You know
throw
you're
a
in
bit of
trouble when
cosmic
you're
turtle
saying
at
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would have copped the cosmic turtle ahead of the spider.
Everyone watched the dailies and said, "Can we reshoot? Is there any room for the cosmic turtle in here somewhere?"
No, they said, "Can we reshoot? Get Tim Curry." Tim's not answering. Tim's gone.
Is the cosmic turtle answering?
He's not coming back.
They should have gone a completely different route and met up with Egg Shen outside the Barrens, taken him down.
Yeah, that could have
A
worked.
little bit of magic. I would have preferred that.
Yeah.
I didn't have any other major dislikes because that finale is a real sticking point for me. I did not like it at all.
Yeah. It's a shocker.
And it actually really, up until that point, I was still fairly happy with what I'd seen.
Yeah.
But I was really fucking disappointed. When that all plays out, I was just like, that's really just left a nasty taste in my mouth somewhat.
Yeah.
It's fair enough.
Yeah. I think.
I mean, they didn't crap in me cereal, but they left one right next to me while I was eating breakfast.
Yeah. Fair call.
I cracked on the table.
I only had one other one that we didn't mention, only very brief. It was just, other than my note that said the spider just doesn't hold up in any way, was the I forgot to mention the jump scare with the guy asking for change.
Oh, yeah.
That's got to go down as one of the worst jump scares I've ever seen in my life. Mainly due to acting, I think, but it was so bad. I couldn't let it go.
All parties involved in that deserve a kick up the arse.
Yeah, it was just shocking. Just leave it out.
Now, Matty, did you have any other dislikes?
No, just the middle and the ending, that's all.
So what? 60 minutes?
Yeah, there's a fair bit of
60
it.
minutes worth?
Yeah, 65 to 70 minutes of the film is pretty bad.
But otherwise, it was great. All right, well, look, let's take another quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll just have a bit of a chat about comparing the two parts and what our thoughts are.
Take your pick. Billy Boy. Oh, except for the one on the end. That's already taken. Sorry.
We've just covered part 2. We covered chapter 2 in a previous episode. Check that out if you want our thoughts. Now, Luke gave us his thoughts on this as well. He gave it 3.5 out of 5. He enjoyed it, but was disappointed with some of the aspects. He felt it was it was actually hard to top chapter 1's efforts, and it kind of doesn't quite get there. He felt there was a couple of plot points and some scenes that were a diminishing factor to the film. It did have some good moments, but they were there was more dislikes this time around. Now, I rewatched this, and I'm sure you guys both did as well.
Mm-hmm.
I re-listened to our episode. We needed to bump up our numbers, so...
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, I
started
didn't do that,
downloading
mate.
it.
I've got better things to do.
You got other stuff to listen to, not that bullshit.
Yeah, I had 3 to 4 other podcasts that were probably more worthy of my time.
Yeah, thanks for the plug. But I gave it 3.5 when we covered it, and I believe Gibbo and yourself both also gave 3.5. I still feel it's a 3.5. You know, there were things about it that I really, really liked, and I still enjoyed myself watching it. there are more, and I would agree with Luke, there are more dislikes to this one, and it doesn't hang as solidly as the first chapter.
Yeah.
How do you feel? How do you guys feel?
Oh, if I was going to change my opinion, it would only be slightly. Like, I'd still probably go for a 3.5, a 3 at worst.
Yeah.
Look, it's got some big issues, and there's parts of it that just Luke hit it on the head there. I just feel that the chapter 1 is more solid from start to finish and doesn't have these gaps that are just a little bit flat. But, and I said it the first time around, I still finish it up and feel really satisfied with the bond of the group and the friendship angle that carried over from part 1, and that's sort of where I get the points from, I guess. That and the casting is just phenomenal.
Yeah, the likenesses are uncanny.
Yeah, I still can't get over James Ransone and the kid that played Eddie. They are just like, it's uncanny.
Yeah.
So I think you do carry some of that feeling over from chapter 1, but I just couldn't shake, even this time with the issues, front and center. I still finished the movie and I was really satisfied.
Look, I was so excited after seeing the shorts. The trailer is one of the best. I was like, this is going to be a 4.5. Like the scene with Beverly and what was going on there, and then you get to the movie and you see the naked lady stomping around. It goes down. It goes down.
Shit out of me. Put some clothes on.
But yeah, I don't know. There's some parts I really liked. I thought sort of like you can pick out some really memorable parts of it. But I think, like Luke said, I think there was some in it that dragged and bits in it that just became dislikes that sort of took away from, I guess, what makes it a movie and what holds it together. So I was at a 3 when I watched it because I think a big part of that was how excited I was based on the trailer.
I do apologise, Luke. He gave me a much more detailed pros and cons on part 2, and I'll probably be paraphrasing some of it for what I'm going to say here. We had similar sort of likes. There are a number of really great sequences in chapter 2. For instance, the stuff under the bleachers, which is really creepy with the little girl.
Yep.
The stuff in the funhouse is really solid. I really enjoyed that sequence. There are a number of really good set pieces. But for me personally, there are 2 big problems for me. The adults never quite seem as tight. We don't get that great sort of feeling of friendship and the summer of our lives and all that awesome stuff that was in the first one when they were kids.
It's because they spend that big chunk in the middle focusing on them being apart.
Yeah,
which to me is
they all get separated.
I kind of get why they did that, because they had forgotten everything and they were still a little bit tentative about knowing each other, if you know what I mean. Which I understood that, but it just wasn't as, I don't know, I just didn't get the same kind of vibe that I got from chapter 1.
They do such a good job in the first movie of setting up that theme of Derry being an evil place, and it just ties in so well with, I guess, some of the systemic things that are wrong with society that we're sort of being forced to pay attention to at the moment. And the second one, they just forget all about that. And it's
the only part that really puts that out there for me is the start, the Adrian Mellon stuff.
Yeah,
like that. Still watching that was really unsettling, because it's sort of, those kids represent, kids that, as you said, we've seen in society that just have no hope, and this is where they end. They're in Derry, and they're never gonna. They're just part of that evil kind of ingrained sort of stuff, and then tying that into the bit with Pennywise at the end, which is one of the few parts in this movie where he's actually kind of creepy.
Yeah, it's subtle.
Bobbing in and out and seeing him, and then
chewing on an arm.
Yeah,
that I feel kind of similar. That's where it is really hit home, and then it sort of drifts away from that a little bit.
Yeah. And my other big problem, and again, we don't want to turn this into sort of another review of part 2, of
Yeah.
chapter 2, because I'd like to actually look at the two together and just get our sense on that. But the humour, although some of it is really good, you know, I got a lot of laughs out of Bill Hader.
Yep.
But there are just moments where it is used in the absolute 100% wrong place.
Yeah. A couple of spots where it just shouldn't be there.
And that's the one. That's why I was talking about wanting to giving a kicking to the Bowers situation,
Yeah.
where he attacks Eddie in the bathroom.
Yep.
It's shocking. Like, it's not. They try and go for laughs. It's not funny. It's not relevant because he then attacks Mike in the library about 5 minutes later. So why did we even have it?
It feels like a classic case of trying to surprise the people that knew the original material and saying, oh, you thought he was going to go for Mike? Well, here he is, and he's got Eddie. And then it's pointless.
Yeah, it didn't work for me at all.
Yeah.
And just there was another couple of comedic moments, and Luke brings up one that I'm still baffled by why it was in there, and I don't know if you guys can shed some light on it, where the leper guy yaks in Eddie's face to the sounds of Angel of the Morning for 2 seconds? I'm just like, what is this?
I did kind of look. When I saw that, I did kind of chuckle briefly, but then, it was 1 to 2 seconds, and then it turned into laughing because this is silly. It shouldn't be there.
Why even have that?
And especially considering that was one of the best parts of the movie where he's choking him out. It was something different, and Eddie's sticking up for himself for once in his life, and then that's the exit.
Yeah.
It was a little bit odd. It was. I think they were going for something stylistically. They were trying to do something that probably it wasn't necessary to do at that point.
No. All right. Well, look. Let's
The
go
80s
away from
vibe or something.
looking at part 2 or chapter 2, and let's just look at the two side by side as a bit of a comparison. Look, I said it before. It's kind of apples and oranges. Part 2 is hampered by the censorship for television, the money involved, the quality of the acting, apart from Tim Curry, as opposed to a movie that's got $100 million worth of budget, can use Pennywise in all sorts of ways because of the CGI. So he can be a spider with Pennywise's body on him.
Yeah,
and that
I didn't
worked
like that,
far
though.
better.
I didn't like
But it worked far better for me.
Yeah, I can understand. I don't like the spider.
I just felt like, the thing for me was if you were going to use the spider, I preferred it with Pennywise on top because that's what scared us for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
So if you were adamant on going for the spider, well, a spider with Pennywise's sort of upper body was a reasonable kind of meet halfway for me. So
I just find it silly. I'm like, a spider's scary by itself. Why does it need to have his head?
Yeah.
How attached is he to the clown?
it sort of comes back to what you said before. Could we have looked at something different?
Yeah.
You know, could we have?
If it wanted to make its mark, that was where it was going to do it.
Well, I mean, I think we can all agree it was much scarier in part 1 when they went down to the sewer and it was the clown.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It didn't have to be the spider.
There's that scene where they're all holding hands and he's in everyone's ear.
Yeah. It's I don't know. You know, they obviously wanted to ramp it up from doing the same thing that they did in part 1, and what would scare a kid wouldn't necessarily be the same thing that scares an adult. But in some ways, it is. It is that kind of. The story is that you can't shake some of the stuff from your childhood. That you can't shake the same fears and the same insecurities that were there. They still kind of linger. So I don't know. Could they have kept it a little bit more, similar to what it was? But in the comparison, I mean, it doesn't even. Yeah, it's you can't even.
They do it
next to each other.
better. Yeah,
you can't. The only thing for me, this is a personal opinion, that is better about the original, the miniseries, is Tim Curry. I just prefer Pennywise to be that like human who then just kind of changes into sort of rage and stuff like that. I'm not knocking Skarsgård's performance, and I'm not knocking the version of it in the new ones. It's a different type of it. But it's more of a supernatural entity, whereas Tim Curry feels like the clown next door who suddenly can rip your arm off.
Yeah, it's a bit more conscious.
And I just prefer
He's not desperate to get the kid so he can have his feed or so he can take him back to the lair. He's setting you up for the kill you don't realise. He's every man, and he's going to set you up for that kill that you don't expect.
I'm in the minority. I've come around to Skarsgård. I like his better. And that's not to say I don't like Tim Curry's. I think Tim Curry is classic, and it always will be. But I personally, Skarsgård has become my preferred version of it. I think I'm a little bit more from the perspective of the kids. Like seeing, as you were saying, you kind of like it from the perspective of Pennywise, and how he's kind of operating. I kind of like looking at it from the kids' perspective and seeing this thing that is somewhat, that you could see getting your attention as, it's a clown, but is always, when you look at it, there is always something off, slightly off.
That's his
and even
eye.
if it's just the eye. Yeah, well, that's the thing. There's the parts where he does kind of try to look like the happy clown.
Yeah.
You look at the really pointed teeth and the eyes slightly off.
A bit of drool.
And yeah, little bits of drool, and I'm kind of like, that's sort of would, you could see, like the little girl under the bleachers. Yeah. She's a little bit tentative, but then he does get her with the little happy clown.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, I
he's
sort of
reeling.
dig it from,
he's reeling with it.
Yeah, I sort of dig it from that perspective, and I think he does, again, benefit from he gets a couple of scenes where they get to use the CGI and use things like him moving quickly and being able to set up where the balloons are really nicely and using the effects that way. So, that's not to put down Tim Curry. I think what Tim Curry did was fantastic, but
what did you think of the wood chopper,
ahead.
the giant wood chopper?
I hated that. I really didn't like it. I think that was in the book too, wasn't it? The Paul Bunyan.
I can't remember.
Paul Bunyan,
Yeah, I didn't dig it. Did you like it?
For me,
I thought it was all right. It was interesting, but I wasn't that into it.
Yeah.
For me, if you're new to it, you can't go past the new movies.
Yeah.
Because there's much more length, so there's more to cover. The special effects are far more advanced, so you're getting the things that Stephen King had actually put in the book are getting seen, and it's probably it's much more faithful to the book. Yeah, barring a cosmic turtle or two,
they get pretty close to it.
It gets pretty close to what King had.
Yeah,
and the one thing it gets right is the whole idea of friendships die.
Yeah.
We go away, we leave this place after putting it to bed. We go away and we'll lose touch. And the book, I remember tearing up at the end of the book because he's just got this whole thing about how friendships die and we lose the people that we've been close to in this particular situation. They go away and then we forget each other. We ring occasionally and then we slowly forget.
Yeah.
And the movies get that right, or as close as you can get to it.
Tell you what, mate, that the last couple of weeks, that cold, shriveled heart of yours is coming back to life. You're tearing up left, right, and centre. It's like the
My
Grinch.
heart's beating like a jackhammer, Jared. And look, I cannot be 100% sure that the tears weren't because of the prose, or just the fact that I've finished fucking 1,150 pages.
Yeah, you were broken down mentally. You're a broken man.
Look, do you guys feel the same way? I just feel you just can't. You can't say, listen, go back and watch the 1990 version.
Yeah.
I just feel
the second half
just
of that I never want to see again.
If you had to pick one, it's I think it's got to be the movies for mine.
Yeah.
In terms of what you were saying about the book and getting a bit more depth of what's in the book and being more faithful, I agree. I think that's something that's in the movies corner. But the one thing I will say on that is the ritual, bringing the ritual in. I know it was kind of a little bit there was fans that were really happy that they were going to be doing that. But then it meant nothing in the movie.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't work.
Because it didn't work.
So it's sort of...
And it made Mike look like a jerk.
Yeah, Mike got treated like he in... That was the one thing I felt in the miniseries. The character that stood out as being better was Mike.
Yeah, he was a beacon of niceness. And,
yeah, he played his role.
Yeah, that's right.
And in the movies, they took that kind of role of the historian away from him in part 1, and they gave it to Ben. And looking back, I kind of feel like the reason is to kind of tie in with that interest in architecture, because he talks about the sewers and the plans and all that sort of stuff. But I felt like you still give Mike the historian angle like they did in the series, where they show him doing the speech on the history of the place. But then even in part 2, they give him that back. But as you said, he looks like a jerk, the way that he makes it happen. And I just feel like that undercuts what it's about. That these people still had that bond from their childhood, and that he's that beacon that brings it back together, and they kind of form that bond again. It's sort of, it undercuts it a little bit.
I think,
Yeah,
I agree. I agree. I thought they definitely took a lot away from that character.
Yeah.
I thought the same with Ben, actually. The new Ben, they just picked this chiseled guy, but he'd lost all of the charm of the kid version of himself.
Well, he's very good looking, though.
Yeah, I'm not denying that, but I'm just saying that he just looked like he'd been in the gym and hadn't had a conversation the whole time that they'd been apart.
And look, honestly, they kind of rushed that too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The relationship
I just thought he
between
lost
him
some
and Bev.
depth. I really liked the kid version. He had all the knowledge and was interested and researched, and I think they took a lot away with the adult version. He was just like, I just want to be with Bev, and
I think
that's all he turned into. It was the potential love interest that we need to have in there to make this a hit.
And I think Chapter 1 did that. Maybe it's a product of that, is that Chapter 1 did that sort of so well with the scene outside the school where he's on his bike and talking about what he's listening to, and it was kind of really sweet, but then they also gave him that time to bond with the group as well, and so yeah, I see what you're saying there for sure.
Yeah, you know what? I think they could potentially have even cut the flashbacks out, potentially, because I actually remember there being more flashbacks. But there's actually not that many in Chapter 2. Like, it's not a great deal of screen time that the young kids get. And maybe we needed to take a fresh approach and say, well, we need to flesh out these adult characters better.
Yeah.
Because that's what was missing in part 2 of the miniseries. They weren't really fleshed out. Bill Hader is the MVP.
Yeah.
He's great. Like, I really, really liked him, and I thought his performance was fantastic. And I really liked him in, what was the name of Eddie? The older version of Eddie?
James Ransone.
Yeah, him and James Ransone are really good together. I thought they were the best part of that pair. But you've got someone like Jessica Chastain, and you really don't give her much to do.
Yeah, she was pretty useless in it.
They could have spent a little bit more time in the whole Ben, Bill, Bev situation.
Yeah, it feels like
don't. I think there's...
It feels like they sort of mistake 3 hours for character development when they didn't spend the time doing that. Like an example for me would be the fairground scene in the fun house. I really liked that visually, but I watched it this time and I thought that's just bloat, because that kid didn't even really need to be there.
Yeah.
And it was
just an excuse to drag him to the fair so they could have the kid.
Yeah. And the kid, him talking to the kid and reaching into the drain, that stuff just I didn't feel like that needed to be there. Not necessarily suggesting any ways that they could have done it, but I just felt they should have done something other than just send them on their separate ways to find this little token. So.
Yeah, agreed.
Brutal kill, though.
Yeah, it was, visually it's a cracker. Him just banging his head on the glass, he's like, whoa, settle down, son.
Look, I think to put a sort of a pin on it, I will always watch the miniseries once in a while because it holds a very nostalgic part of my childhood. So
Yep.
I will always watch it, even though it looks a bit ordinary.
It's the same
in this
reason
day
I
and
like
age.
Carrie more than you guys, because I think that was my introduction to the genre.
Yeah, totally. And I think those films or those things always have a place. No matter how dated or how old they get, it's there. It's always been a part of your life. And I look at something, like Jaws, for instance. That's another thing that's always going to be there. I'm very glad that Jaws is still a fantastic movie upon rewatch. Unfortunately, it is not at that level, or it's not a great piece of TV, but it'll always get me there. But I would much prefer to watch the two movies, just from a quality perspective.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, same as you. I'm glad we've got the choice and that we've experienced it twice in two different ways. There's always I enjoy seeing different people's takes on the material, and as I mentioned before, I really do love both versions of Pennywise. If we weren't making a little conversation out of this, you wouldn't have to pick one of the other. But if that was the choice, you're going to go for the movies.
Yeah. All right, that is it. Part 2 wrapped up. Big thanks to Luke, mate. I apologise for not being able to sort of provide more of your thoughts on part 2. You had some really good pros and cons there, and I think a lot of us would probably be of the exact same mind. But again, mate, thank you very much for providing your thoughts on both of these. Always good to have you involved. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, and Podomatic. You can send us an email at thrillme@iinet.net.au. We're on Facebook at Thrill Me Podcast Australia, Podomatic at thrillme.podomatic.com, and at Instagram at Thrill Me Podcast AU. Now, next episode, I believe I put forward 2 different films. I said Speed 2 or Lethal Weapon 2, and one person of this threesome replied with, I haven't seen Lethal Weapon.
Jared.
Yeah, I've been busy,
And
mate. I've had things to do.
was met with a fair amount of ridicule. So, unfortunately, we're going to have to go with Speed 2.
Yeah. I thought,
Which I recently found out has 4% on Rotten Tomatoes, so can't wait.
Classic Adam pick.
Yeah, just so Adam, I know you mentioned to Matty when you found out he hadn't watched Lethal Weapon, you said, what have you been doing with your time? I would suggest spending it productively.
Yeah, actually, doing something.
Yeah, I think so.
There was cheese to be
Getting out of the
grated in the
house.
milk bar, I'm just saying.
Yeah, there was pizzas to make. Those people weren't going to feed themselves.
That's right. Pizzas needed to be topped. But I'm going to put it to you this way. When I heard you hadn't seen Lethal Weapon, I rubbed my hands together because I knew I was going to see Speed 2.
Yeah, awesome.
So it worked in my favour.
I haven't seen Speed 2 either, so I gotta get on that too.
I think we're thinking alike
mate.
here, Adam. My immediate thought was, oh no, and then I thought, gee, it's been a while since I watched it. Like, there's a little bit of excitement there.
That will be immediately extinguished within the first 5 minutes, I can tell you.
As you put it, I think someone will be shitting in our cereal by that one.
Yeah. It'll be 90% shit and 10% worth of cereal.
Couple of oats sprinkled on top.
Exactly. All right. That is it for this episode. Keep an eye on the Facebook page and obviously keep a lookout for our next episode. But until then, take it easy and we'll catch up with everyone later. Cheers. Find the podcast at Podomatic or on iTunes. Don't forget to rate and review. Like us on Facebook at Thrill Me Podcast Australia or contact us at thrillme, all one word, all lowercase, at iinet.net.au.